I'm Dustin Boyer, and this is my point 4 cents.
Hi, I'm Matt Bacon.
Hi, I'm Jesse Kedden.
And I'm Andrew Southworth, and this week we have a super interesting interview with Manifest, aka Chris Greenwood, aka Smart Music Business, who has hundreds of millions of streams for his music. He sold tens of thousands of records. He's been in a bunch of record deals over the years. And we have a super interesting talk about the journey that he's had as an artist, how he's evolved, and what he's seen work for other artists nowadays as well. We ran a study on Spotify's algorithm. This is actually a part 2. So what we did is we collected, I think, like 500 or 600 different data points from artists where they submitted for one or more of their songs, how many streams it's had in the last 7 days, the last 28 days, how many listeners, how many saves, how many followers, and a bunch of other data points, including how many streams I've gotten from Algorithmic playlists for their music. And we got like 500 or 600 data points entries from about 300 and something artists. And then I partnered with a data scientist, Mark Schmida, who also partnered with Zhizhu Liu, another data scientist, who actually made a machine learning model to calculate like an equation for the Spotify popularity index, and also crunch some numbers for, on average, how many streams does it take to trigger Release Radar, Discover Weekly, radio, etc., and also figure out how does radio change over time for this. And so essentially, we literally have an equation in this 26-page report that we have here that shows if you want to know what popularity index, which is an internal number Spotify uses to calculate various algorithmic traction, you can literally, it's we know exactly what it is essentially. And it's a very surprisingly very simple math equation that ended up being the most accurate fit.
And can you just break down, Andrew, real quick before we get into the nuts and bolts, what popularity score is, how to see it, all that stuff?
The popularity index is a number Spotify has in the back end of their API. So Spotify has this developer area where you can go in and with code access information about music. So you can access the name of a song, the title of the artist of a song, the audio analysis of a song, and various other metrics Spotify has. But one of them is the popularity index. And a lot of us nerdy music marketers, probably all of us here, have noticed over the years that you typically see various algorithmic pushes at certain levels. Like when a song hits a certain size, it gets a certain, it starts getting on a certain algorithmic playlist on Spotify. And what me and a lot of other people I talked to noticed that at about a 20, and this was going back a few years ago, you'd start seeing Release Radar push your song out to new people. And then around a 30, you would start seeing Discover Weekly push your song out. So then it became the question of well, how do we figure out what does it take to get a 20 or a 30? Right. And that's kind of how this started. And a couple of years ago, we did this study, and this was back in the day when radio was kind of an insignificant playlist to a lot of artists.
Yeah.
Back in the day, it was all about Release Radar and Discover Weekly.
Discover Weekly was everything for the longest time.
And a lot of people have been noticing that nowadays radio is the jam. And, surprise, surprise, Spotify introduced Discovery Mode, which takes 30% of your streams and Discovery Mode context, which radio and autoplay. And now radio is, surprise, surprise, the dominant algorithmic playlist on the platform. But so we wanted to update the study to figure out how does popularity index factor in radio and all that stuff as well. And also how does Discovery Mode factor in? And this is part 2. We actually did open it up to a part 3 that we wanted to just immediately start running, but we'll get into that.
And before we go deeper in again, I just have one more question to clarify for the audience on popularity scores. You can use musicstacks.com. Musicstacks is spelled with an X, I believe.
Yes.
So musicstax.com. You can find the popularity score of your songs. It's great. But what do you do to actually grow your popularity score? Someone goes and puts their song in and they see the popularity score is a 3. As we're going to see, that doesn't do much for you. How do you take it from a 3 to a 20? Just real quick, just to give context.
What we expected was there would be some complicated relationship of streams, listeners, saves, playlist adds, followers, etc. And the actual answer is it all just comes down to streams in the last 28 days. The more streams essentially, it's 95% is solely determined by streams in the last month. So if you want to increase your popularity index, You just need more streams.
Well, I have so many questions, and
Yeah.
I don't know what you have answers to, but I watched this thing, and as somebody who's anecdotally been analyzing Spotify for a while, this was really enlightening. The idea that saves and playlist ads are only worth as much as they produce streams was interesting. So, in my mind, I've always wondered, you said earlier streams. Does the amount of listeners on a song, let's just take a song, forget the catalog. You have a new song, you put it out.
Yeah.
Does the amount of listeners matter more than streams?
I've been saying streams just because it's kind of easier, but like it shows the equation there. And it is actually calculated off of listeners in the last 28 days.
Got it.
But it's I believe the song, and I might have to go through the report and clarify or ask Mark, but I believe the correlation was essentially identical in terms of popular. Like the popularity index was mostly just determined by streams, but I don't think there was like a huge like difference between looking at all the numbers for listeners versus streams. It was just like the math was shifted. So for example, if it was you need 13,000 streams in the last month to get Discover Weekly, it was like you need 6,000 or something listeners. So it's like just proportionally like a multiplier off.
I see. So
Hit certain popularity.
this kind of brings me, because I have a strategy, and I've talked about this ad nauseum around the catalog, right? You drive stream listeners to a catalog, you get them to stream 8, 10 times on your catalog, improves your popularity score. Now, that was all anecdotal, but you have data.
You're
And
talking artist popularity though, right?
well, see, and that's I guess maybe that's the distinction I'm trying to understand, because right, there are, and for the audience, there are two different popularity scores, your artist popularity and the song popularity. And so I'm curious, is this based off of the song popularity?
Yeah.
Got it.
Everything we did here was based off of like individual songs. And that is actually something I've heard anecdotally from multiple people where they're saying, "Oh, once you hit a certain artist popularity, this unlocks for you," or and I've never tracked that.
No,
Jesse's
Really?
shaking his
I,
head.
I've tracked that enough to say I don't need data to see that that's not the case because we
Yeah.
see songs not go in when they make absolutely terrible songs. Like when some of these people are like, "Why is this song not going into Discover Weekly on a thing?" And it's like, no one's listening to this song. Like,
Yeah, I've noticed it's been mostly like everything song specific, and even when artists say like, "Oh, I got botted in the past," or "I worked with this former label and they ran bullshit on my stuff, and like now I'm releasing new music. Should I like restart?" And I mean, sometimes the answer is yes, but most of the time it's like Spotify does everything in a song by song basis, so for the most part, don't worry about it unless it was something crazy that you did.
so Andrew, I wanted to get into this. Does this really just so when I had done something trying to figure this out years ago as well, one of the main things people say is it's just a matter of pure streams. Skips do not matter. What did you find there?
Well, we couldn't track skips.
Mm.
So the conclusion that we had at the end of the day was based off of one, I mean the correlation there's a graph. This one here. This graph shows the predicted and true values of the popularity index at least. It doesn't necessarily show like entry onto Discover Weekly, but like there's another graph that shows like on general how many streams to get to Discover Weekly. So what this shows like for at least calculating the popularity index, the green here is the real data, and the orange here is the calculated data based off of like the model, right? Pretty damn accurate, right? In terms of the yellow and the orange, they're basically perfect aside from anything lower than like the very bottom end of it. It starts to go negative in our model. So the orange is the model and the green is the real life data.
What I really would love to do to see the real value of like whether people like it or if it's just driving up streams is like I'd love to get like an out of tune singing over a harsh noise song and then do advertising creative to Taylor Swift fans and then see what happens when none of them end up listening all the way through, how much that affects it.
So with the final conclusion we had, or I don't remember exactly where this is in the report, but that like there's all these undefined, like all these metrics we can't track, such as skip rate or listen time or like how many songs they listen to by an artist or whatever, that are probably lead to like the variations on when you hear an artist that says, "Hey, I hit 20,000 streams in a month and I got no Discover Weekly," or vice versa. I didn't even need that much and I got this big algorithmic push.
Yeah.
And I think that's the kind of like it factor, so to speak, that like if you imagine, if you send like 100 people and they're all like the exact same type of person, Spotify is going to be it's so easy to tell what they all have in common. But if you send them 100 just random people or the wrong people, it's gonna like they're gonna skip it a ton and they're gonna kind of ding you for it. So I have to imagine there's this like other layer there that we can't account for because you can get skip rate in the back end of your distributor on certain
Mm.
distributors. And I've thought about trying to find a way to do that with Mark, who did this data, because like I use the Orchard
Mhm.
for my label for a lot of our stuff on the label, and we get skip rate. We don't
Mhm.
get listen time, but we get skip rate. I have to imagine that that metric matters like a ton.
I think we just make some music that Matt would like and then market it to Swifties, and then we see what's
Mhm.
happening here.
Yep. Yep.
Sorry that I have elitist taste, Jesse.
What I'm curious about is you run ads, Andrew. This is such a great study. In a practical sense, does this change anything that you've been doing? Did you learn things that you were like, "You know what? I'm gonna do something different." And I also have a billion other questions, but I'm curious
Yeah.
about that more than anything else.
I think the biggest takeaway from this whole study is one, it's good to know roughly how many streams you need to hit certain algorithmic traction. Like, in this here, we found that about 13,000 streams is what you need to get to start seeing Discover Weekly. There's a few layers to this, but this is specifically for certain popularity indexes. This graph or this table is showing like from the data that we had, what is the mean, min, and the max Discover Weekly streams that we saw for songs with these popularity index. So this graph actually really just shows like kind of streams you can expect for certain popularity indexes from Discover Weekly. If you want to get a popularity index of 30 to 32, and we calculated things in buckets just to like have the certain data points in certain categories. If you want to hit that popularity index, you need about 13,000 streams in a month, about 7,000 listeners in a month, or specifically 28 days.
And this is a
And
like a
so
rolling 28 days, right? So, like,
rolling
this
28.
isn't like, well, it resets at the end of the month. It is you've nailed this in 28 days, and so there's that bump and pop score.
Exactly. Yeah. So like for the release radar, it's calculated off of like the first month, but the Discover Weekly, it's like a rolling month. So if you get like 10,000 streams in month one and then a month passes and then you get 5,000 streams month two, it's not like, okay, if you hit 15, you're going to get pushed in Discover Weekly. You didn't hit the number required. Now, granted, these are averages here. So there are situations when people hit it a little bit less, and situations a little bit more. But it's nice to know kind of what to aim for.
Could I ask a question with that? So, did you find that genre was defining for which ones needed higher? Because, like, a thing I used to find when used to look at this data a lot more 2 years ago was that, like,
Yeah.
EDM, a very crowded genre, you'd need like a 35 to get on Release Radar and Discover Weekly, whereas like the weirdo art pop kids I was working with were getting it at like 23.
I don't remember. So Mark has a 50-minute video
Science.
where he goes through this report in a lot more detail, and he actually did the nitty-gritty data.
Mm.
And I don't remember if it came down to that there was no statistical difference or if we didn't have enough data points for different genres to confidently say. But I do see that at least for radio specifically, there's actually a section that says the following variables were 1 point part of the configuration, but did not show any significantly influence. And one of them was genre. So
Huh.
one was genre, one was how the song is promoted, and one was how many songs this artist released, release consistency, days since released, independent or signed to a label. None of those metrics had any significant difference on radio.
So there's the headline musicians that you can't keep saying the major label is gonna be
Yeah.
what saves you.
The only reason they can save you is they can dump money and
Yeah.
resources
Yeah.
into you.
What I find interesting though is, I've run, and obviously you all have done the same, consistent ads for sometimes years on end, and nothing will ultimately change in our ad spend, but we will hit these algorithmic huge milestones out of nowhere without even a huge pop score. And sometimes, and
Yeah.
I know that your data specifically about a pop score, but sometimes it feels like even though the pop score hasn't changed, it's almost as if we provided it enough data, listener data, that it goes, "Oh, you're within this range, and now also we understand more about you,
Mhm.
therefore we'll reach
Yeah.
more people." Is do you think that that's the case, Andrew?
That might be, but one of our conclusions that is related to the exact same thing you just described was that you can imagine, let's say you have a song with a bunch of data, and it's like a you're like a black metal band or something, right? Which is a fairly like it's a pretty niche genre that like one algorithmically like people probably don't consume in like algorithmic playlists very much. But let's say then like one of the biggest black metal bands or something releases like a big song. So now everyone is listening to the genre at a way higher volume than they were. Now there's more radio to recommend, right?
Mm,
If all of a sudden like this artist drops a song and the amount of people listening to that genre 5x's because that
wow.
artist is so popular, there's
Okay.
actually more radio to go around
So
because it's like
it's
easier to
the
recommend it.
it's like the market grew, therefore
Yeah.
more listeners.
Or like shifted, like yeah, the market for that genre grew, but like maybe, maybe they're mostly listening to like prog metal or stuff because like they're a casual black metal fan. And then all of a sudden Opeth drops some things, they're kind of proggy black metal. And then someone jumps in them. At least they were. I'm sure Matt has thoughts on what they are. But their old stuff was kind of like proggy black metal. And then like if they drop a song like that, all of a sudden like the people who were listening to that are now listening to this and they can recommend all this other stuff that's like tied to it.
I
I
almost
probably shouldn't
wonder
have
if
picked a genre that Matt knows so much about.
well, and I'll tell you that, like, we run these playlists that are just specifically focused on the playlist themselves and not just the artist for that playlist, but we're trying to obviously make that comparison, and I always thought it was a data thing, like, I want you to listen to all these other black metal artists along with mine, therefore, it compares us to them, but it almost feels like
Yeah.
maybe we're tricking thousands of people's radio algorithm into listening to that genre more often, including our artist,
Your
increasing the
industry
market.
planting.
Yeah, industry. Thank you
But
for the
I
plug.
think, from what I understand, it's a little of column A, a little of column B. So you have a lot of people listening to this big hypothetical black metal band. They also then, let's say 10% of that audience listens to a more niche artist in that genre. Spotify is going to go, okay, a lot of people who like 10% of this bigger artist audience seems to like this small artist. Let's show the small artist to more of that big artist's fans. Except imagine that across the top 10 biggest black metal artists. Let's say 10% of their fans all listen to the smaller artist. That smaller artist
Yeah.
is suddenly going to start getting a lot of love. And this is also why, just to circle back to like the DIY thing, why the community building is a big, big piece of what matters here is that if you can start building that word of mouth that fans of this bigger artist will like you, that starts to siphon some of them off. And if you can siphon off even, 100, suddenly you're going to start getting more love that way because the algorithm's going to know how to sort you, right? And it's that collaborative filtering thing, but you can do it in an analog way. But you see that working for artists with hundreds of thousands of Spotify monthly listeners who have no clue what a popularity score is.
Yeah, and like I would imagine it's kind of like the rising tide lifts all ships kind of model where like, a lot of metal fans complain about Sleep Token not really being metal or
Mhm.
whatever. But the reality is I think that Sleep Token popping off and being mainstream. I went to Spencer's yesterday and they had 6 different Sleep Token shirts. They had a whole Sleep Token
I like
section.
you just
Like
casually
Ooh.
going to Spencer's.
well, we went to the mall and walked the baby around, so
Yeah.
but I bought some shirts. I bought a
Yeah.
new Sleep Token shirt. I now have 2 Sleep Token shirts.
But it's
Um,
Well, I wanna
and
add
the
to
thing
that.
is, like,
Oh god.
when Sleep Token wins and grows and becomes this mainstream band, they are then introducing, like, thousands of
Yes.
casuals to metal, and now, like, when like, there's this band Thornhill that's opening up for Sleep Token on their upcoming tour, and, like, a bunch of Sleep Token fans are gonna spill into Thornhill and then find the whole, like, Deftones core vibe genre thing, and then there's all these other bands that fit that bill that are gonna be algorithmically associated with them. So the success of Sleep Token doesn't just cause Sleep Token to succeed, it causes, like, thousands of bands around them to kinda, like, lift up and cause, like, the metal genre to kinda get a win.
and because what's happening is it's sort of like the nerds will inherit the earth type of thing, where it's like if I'm someone who really loves Sleep Token and I want to like do the research on like, okay, where does this come from sonically, or like what's the rest of this genre, then I'm gonna find Thornhill. Then I'm gonna find all these other little bands. Then I discover Thornhill, and that's gonna take me down somewhere else and down somewhere else, right? But it's like, but that also, that's not just the scene getting bigger. That's also the algorithm then learning the long tail,
Yeah. Yeah, 'cause,
right?
early on when people look up, "I want more bands like this band," and then they
Yes.
find, like, Loathe or something, was another band that kinda fits that bill. The early nerds are kinda the ones who, like, dictate those associations and make those playlists. Like, I don't think casual fans
They're
are
called
making those, like, deep
mavens.
cut playlists.
Yeah.
There's a book about that.
Mavens? Is that
That's why no, there's a book, and I forget, it's a famous author,
It's
Seth
Malcolm
Seth Godin.
Gladwell.
Oh, Malcolm.
yeah,
Malcolm Gladwell, I think.
friend of the show.
But is he?
But it's those,
I
in my
wish.
opinion, like, those
All right.
hardcore fans. They, like, kinda are, like, the initial seed point for, like, categorizing stuff and
Yeah.
whatever. Like, back in the day on, downloading music online, people used to bring their iPods to my house, and I would load up their
Mhm.
iPods with all the music I found because I was, like, that guy. Um,
You were a maven.
I guess
No,
so.
no, I'm just start using that term. I do wanna say though, when I watched this video of yours, and by the way, I was so jealous because it was so brilliant. Like, I was like, "This,"
Yeah.
I mean, genuinely, I was like, "What?" I'm not jealous, but yeah, kinda maybe jealous. That's how I know when I'm really impressed. I'm like, "I
Envious.
should
It's
do
that
this."
Envious.
thing of like, it's that thing of like, you're like, oh fuck, he's a lot smarter than me. Shit.
Yeah, no, that was
Yeah.
100%. And the casual degree, I've got an engineering degree, but I don't use it. No, it's
Did you like my subtle mic drop at the start of that video?
it was good, dude. But I
Yeah.
will say, I got really excited because I have to educate so many of my client managers, and in their defense, they have a lot of shit to worry about. So on the marketing front, I'm always educating them on things. And one of the things I've been trying to push more recently is that we need to front load our budget on all these releases. And weirdly enough, it's a hard sell because consistency is really important, and they want to make sure they have budget for down the line. But this is factual information I'm going to take to them and say, "Hey, I know you could spend $1,000 over the next month and a half on this song. I think we should spend it in 2 weeks. And I think we should go really hand because it'll pay off algorithmically." So I've got a
Yeah.
couple of conversations like that where I'm like, I'm really glad you made this video because that's my biggest takeaway from it is that now there's proof that that is true.
Piggyback on what you said there, that was literally, I was at the gym watching this video, and the first thing I thought is one of the things I've been really pushing to people is like, at fucking midnight, that text and that email better go out on the song
Mhm.
because we've seen with some of the people we've worked with for a long time is the difference between setting the thing noon tomorrow versus 2 days. A lot of time it is momentum and of those streams,
Yeah.
and it really does matter that you get it out there as fast as possible because this rolling 28 days thing. Now, obviously, a song that's really that, and we'll be talking about this in another segment, a song that's released 17 years ago can still go into these
Yeah.
algorithms later on, as I've seen in
But it's
data.
because it's rolling. It can
Yes, and
still
that's because of the
happen.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly it, but it really does matter for this momentum that it happens in a concentrated amount to try to get that giant tsunami wave to go over and keep going as high as it can.
Well, the one X factor there is the release radar playlist
Mm.
because
Yeah.
you're gonna get more love from it. So your ability to create momentum right out of the gate is higher. Um,
Mm.
so that was one thought I had about it where I was just like, yeah, this is absolutely true that you well, and to that degree, I'm wondering then because weekends suck for streaming. So
Mhm.
why aren't we putting this out on Monday? We
I
know, like if we're
Yeah.
gonna get we're talking about
I've
momentum.
worked with some artists who drop on Mondays, and they get so many streams before Friday that instead of getting their release radar push 7 days in, they get it 5 days in or 4 days in, depending on when, like, the part 3 of this study, like, we're already running,
Ruin it.
and for the part
Spoil it.
3, we're requesting Spotify for artist access. And so what we're gonna do is we're literally going to pull data points, like, daily or weekly for songs, and, like, the hope is that it gives us more flexibility to, like, if we have access to 200 artists S4As or something, or even more, we can pull for, like, potentially, like, 1,000 songs, 2,000 songs, who knows? And, learn a lot more about, like, the time thing. Like, what if we look at an artist who is like, "We spent $1,000 in a week," versus, "We spent $1,000 over 2 months," or, like, whatever combination of factors we want to learn about. if we have a massive data pool, we can just learn more. Hey everyone, it's Andrew from the My Point Four Cents podcast, and I'm super stoked that my first guest to this new podcast is the man, the myth, the legend himself, Mr. Chris Greenwood, otherwise known as the badass rock star Manifest, rock rap star. You've gave a diverse music career over the years, but also Smart Music Business is your other brand where you help pass on everything you've learned teaching artists or well, for yourself, passing it on to artists. There's been times where you've hit a million monthly listeners on Spotify. Right now, you're sitting at like 400 and 500,000. I don't know the exact number. You've sold thousands, if not tens of thousands, of albums over the years. You literally have a plaque on your wall, 130,000 streams for one of your records. You got a play button on YouTube. So you've had a pretty epic journey. And I'll give you a minute just to tell everyone kind of who you are, what you're all about.
Yeah, dude. Appreciate the introduction, man. And it's 130 million, not 130,000. You cut me a zero there.
Oh, damn it. Damn it.
But but yeah, man. Been doing music full time now, I guess, since 2006 or 2007. My first EP came out in 2001. I remember mp3.com. I remember when CD Baby was like the first distributor. And so I'm kind of dating myself here, but yeah, I've been doing music for a while. I used to tour full time. That's kind of like how I survived. And I remember being scared to distribute my music digitally to iTunes because I didn't want people stealing my music. And but yeah, touring was how I survived. Thank God I had a really good lawyer, and honestly, the label just didn't believe in me to sign me to a full deal, so they signed me to a licensing deal. And so that meant that they'd have rights to distribute my records for, anywhere from 5 to 7 years. And once those years were up, I got my albums back, and the passive income from that was just like, wow, that's the only way I was able to survive. And so, for the last, I think since 2014, I've been independent and haven't looked back, partnering now just with other artists. And, I'm not saying I wouldn't sign with a label again because, that was part of my journey and I wouldn't have had success in Japan if it wasn't for that partnership and certain partnerships. So I just believe that, if you're going to partner with someone, I think the pie should be bigger. They shouldn't just be cutting up what I've already created. You know what I mean? But yeah, man,
Yeah.
still releasing music, still releasing songs and songwriting, and a little bit more TV and film now, and still coaching artists and helping them with the marketing, similar to what my brother here is doing.
Yeah, I saw on your Instagram that you got a Super Bowl placement
Yeah,
last year?
yeah. Last year was Super Bowl, but the bigger one was the Olympics one because that was a
Oh,
six-figure placement, which was a game changer.
So you literally got paid over 100 grand for to put one of your songs in the Olympics.
Yeah, yeah.
Jesus,
Isn't that
man,
that's crazy, right?
congrats. That's insane to think about that.
Yeah.
Is this something people can just like is it was it in like a commercial that's in the Olympics or was it in a certain
It was the Omega watches commercial, and so Omega has a pretty big budget, and they
Yeah.
were actually asking for more, but they settled on that. And what's wild is I remember getting an email, and I just forwarded it over to my rep, and they handled all the negotiations. And I can tell you, this is why having a booking agent or a manager or someone who knows what they're doing, because I would have cut myself short for sure, and
Yeah.
that's you just perish for a lack of knowledge.
It is kind of hard to imagine that your song could ever be worth $100,000 alone. Never mind for I don't mean you, I mean anyone's song, right? Like I
Yeah,
couldn't imagine one of my own songs getting paid that much money for anything. Never mind just to be placed in a singular commercial
yeah,
that then you could then sell in another commercial down the line. It's not like you sold the rights to your song.
no, no,
You sold the rights for them to use it in this specific epic instance, and that's a good point that if you were doing it, you probably just, because like most artists, you probably have a sense of imposter syndrome. Like most people
yeah,
fair you're like, "There's no way, like, this thing I created could be that valuable," but the reality is it is to
yeah.
people that want it.
And that's like a 2.5-year-old song, and, the streams shot up. I'll get some publishing on the back end that might take a little while to get collected on, but it'll eventually come in. And,
yeah.
I remember writing that song with a buddy just at my kitchen table over Zoom. I tracked the vocals at home on this bike and, and the studio wasn't even, set up like it is now. It wasn't as dead as it is in here now, and, yeah, it's just amazing, right? And, those don't happen all the time. I hope I get more of them. That's for sure. But, yeah, it's really
Yeah.
cool that music has value, man.
Yeah, and I mean, flipping over into the streaming world, it's a completely different story. I mean, you've probably heard of all the artists, pulling their music from Spotify just within recent news stories, and that was actually the topic of the podcast. I don't know exactly what week this is going live, but at probably a couple weeks ago now, that was the topic of one of our discussions. All these musicians pulling their music. How do you view the value of streaming services like Spotify or Apple in the context of like your overall music brand and income and selling albums and getting opportunities like that?
Part of it is that I did sell a portion of my catalog over a year ago. I never thought it would be worth what it was worth, and that's because I was getting paid so much money from Spotify and Apple Music. Now, Spotify is the lion's share of the royalty pool, and it's not because like necessarily I love Spotify so much, but it's just that they are the biggest platform. That is where fans are going. I could be pushing title, but again, that pie is so small and there's just not as much of a user base. And so when COVID hit, I'd actually taken a year off to like just take a break from touring, and then COVID hit, and that made it very difficult to tour, even near when it was over and slowing down. And the touring money stopped, but the royalties and the streaming money did not stop. If anything, they went up and they allowed me to survive, and not just survive, more than survive. So I'm a big
Yeah.
proponent of streaming. I call it, Swiss dollars, sales while I sleep soundly, or streams while I sleep soundly. Like, if I go into my artist dashboard right now, I can see, I don't know how many people are streaming my music, probably 100 and something. I'm trying to look it up right now. 153 people. And again, that's from work that I did months ago, years ago, or whatever. And I just
Yeah.
love that passive income stream. But like what I love about Alex Harmozy, he kind of says, let's make active income great again or whatever. And like I think we're like, yeah, passive income, but like just to kind of give context, I toured my face off. I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars and still spend, a lot of money marketing, not hundreds of thousands right now, but over my career to kind of get, some
Yeah.
momentum and buzz and all this stuff. And so now I've built something, or it's really I've built a business, that now continues to work. But you know what's interesting, Andrew, is my catalog was sellable, and, we
Yeah.
got a very handsome figure for that, but you know what wasn't sellable is my touring business, and that's just dead. And, like, imagine that, like, when I think about that, like, I poured my life, I toured, and I built a
Yeah.
touring business, but as soon as I stopped, the money
Yeah.
stopped. So that was when I think about that now, I'm like, "Dude, I would've just wrote more songs."
Yeah, and also from the perspective of even though you're not touring, even if you were touring, from the perspective of an investor investing in the project, they know that you are a finite human being. They cannot scale Chris Greenwood, right? Like
Right.
you can only be in one place at a time. You can only tour so many nights a week
Yeah.
before your voice is just gonna give out,
Yeah.
right? And eventually you're gonna get old enough where you can't tour anymore, right? Whether that's 20 years from now or it's 10 and you're like my knees hurt, right? Like whatever it
Yeah.
is, eventually you get to a point
Yeah.
where you don't want to or you can't tour anymore. And
Yeah.
so from an investor's perspective, buying a catalog, it's like this infinitely sellable, scalable thing you can repurpose, and it might still be making you money in 50 years,
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
even if you're not even around anymore, right?
Oh, I believe it's totally gonna be able to pass it down to my daughter and family and whatnot. Like, it's
Yeah.
it's definitely, already the songs that like, I've been writing like a beast the last few years to kind of catch up, and rebuild my catalog, and already it's almost worth 6 figures, and, so it's wild, I never
Yeah.
heard about this stuff until, like, maybe 3 years ago, 4 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, so you did as you said, you toured your face off, and that is kind of like the active revenue source. And I think most artists watching this, that do all the things, they probably see most of their money coming in from touring, I would say. And that's probably what was the case for you for most of your life doing this. Um, and a lot of people I know, they view streaming more of like a discovery mechanism
Mm,
than a revenue source. I know plenty of people like you who the streaming is actually like a revenue source. It's like sweet. It's either the primary one or it's a huge chunk. But a lot of people I know, like I know people with less than like 50,000 monthly listeners who make over 100 grand a year
yeah, yeah,
because they tour, they do merch, they do Patreon, they do Kickstarters, which you've done Kickstarters, you do merch
yeah,
and all that too. But for you, it's actually like it's actually a viable revenue source enough that you could actually sell it and get upfront money.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Like we just did a Kickstarter, like a pre. It wasn't a really official Kickstarter, but we did that for my new album. It comes out August 15th. And, we did
Yeah.
about maybe just over 8 grand worth of CDs and merch and stuff, which isn't bad. It's definitely not my highest. We could have pushed it a lot harder, could have gotten more creative or whatnot, but, CDs still sell, merch still sells. We did a lot of the delivery with it, with print on demand this time, just to kinda, because I didn't wanna be, shipping all this stuff and packing envelopes is a lot of work. Signing autographs is enough, but yeah,
Yeah.
that was the beast, was touring. And it's interesting how you said that about, the discovery mechanism, because for me, it was like selling CDs in stores. That would be like the back end. And all of a sudden, though, when streaming took place, yeah, there was like all of a sudden this other revenue source, let alone the publishing. And now obviously sync. But I feel like you gotta focus, man, and you gotta build one at a time kind of thing, or like you gotta, not that you can't build they are there instantly, really, but you gotta decide which one you're gonna work on, you know?
Yeah. There are people who dedicate their whole lives to focusing on just sync, you
Right.
know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I would
And
say
then
I'm leaning into that a lot more, like every month to every 2 to 3 months, I'll do a writing trip and, we'll bang out 5 to 6 songs in a week, just to build the catalog because it's quite the numbers game with that. But what's
yeah.
frustrating is some producers turn over the songs quicker than others, and others take forever to turn the songs around. So it's like I'm investing my time and money to travel there, hotel, car rental, and flight, but because it's a 50-50 deal, as opposed to me paying a producer to, like, produce the record, it's like, "Hey, this is more of a partnership," and
Yeah.
so that's been a real, patience game and, learning how to figure it out, you know?
Yeah, that's actually interesting too. That so the producers you're collaborating with to make the I guess the instrumental part of your song, right? Because you mostly do the vocals, right? You also play instruments too, but at this point you're collaborating with producers for the entire instrumentals, or
Yeah, I don't play any instruments, I'll just, like, top line, I'll write, I'll send a bunch of ideas. They're normally to tracks. I might, like, load something on BeatStars or, use
ah,
find some beat to get an idea started, but they'll definitely produce and play all the instruments. I won't be
actually really
part of them.
surprised that you've released so much music in the genres you work in, and you never like learned guitar out of curiosity.
Yeah, it's
It's
it's back
actually
there. There's an acoustic guitar over there, but, it rarely it's got a lot of dust on it,
That's
unfortunately.
crazy. Yeah, because like, even just the ability to strum some chords or something would probably, help your output a lot. Because then you wouldn't be reliant on, like, scouring BeatStars and YouTube and
Yeah.
to write ideas and stuff, but, man, I didn't know that. I would have assumed you picked up a guitar at one point and
Dude, I've tried many times, man, but I just haven't it hasn't obviously been important enough to learn it, but it's definitely a dream. There's no doubt, dude.
yeah. But actually, back in the day, before you would have the money to, like, be able to hire people to help you with the recordings, um, how did you put stuff together? Did you just, like, save up money from work and then you hired, like, a guitarist to play some parts or a producer to put everything together? Or, like, how'd you piece it back together in the day when, like, you couldn't just get a 50-50 collab with someone because you weren't, the Chris today that
Yeah.
has a huge audience?
Well, I had a really good job, right? Like, so, I used to be in IT, like, I used to be a network engineer, like a computer guy, and
Yeah.
so in my early 20s, I was making 60 to 70 grand a year. And so I was dumping all that into my music. So my first EP was like 4 hip hop tracks and 1 rock track. And I think the guy that was charging me at the time for the rock track was only like 15 or 20 bucks an hour.
Oh,
And so I probably only paid a few $100. I remember my record that one sold hundreds of thousands of copies, and I only paid 10 grand for the whole record, including mix and master. And so and for I didn't realize how good of a deal that was. The price got raised later on. But, like, when I first got started, beats were like 500 bucks, which honestly, these guys shouldn't have been charging me that much, especially how cheap beats are now. It's
yeah,
wild, to think that. But that's kinda how I got started, and there wasn't, like, as many I didn't know as many rock producers as I might know now, and still there's obviously a lot more hip hop producers than rock
yeah,
producers, but now I've kind of got a pretty good network now. But yeah, it was, I just saved like, used all my money and just invested that right back in, and played shows, obviously. So I was
Yeah.
really blessed that way to have a good job. I wish I took the advice of a manager because I gotta quit my job. I gotta quit my job. And I quit my job all right, and that put me in a real screwed position because I hadn't fully built that income stream yet, and I killed the one, and I put a lot of pressure on myself too early. And obviously, we figured it out, but man, if I could
yeah.
go back in time, bro.
I bet. Yeah, I mean, it's not only that, but music can be pretty volatile, right? Like it's especially now with streaming platforms and social media, like everything's an algorithm,
Yeah,
and it's not unusual that you probably have this too with the artists you talk to that someone's like, "Yeah, last few months the radio algorithm just stopped pushing me out as much, and they went from 150,000 monthly listeners to 100,000."
yeah,
They didn't do anything worse. They're still releasing just as good music, regularly marketing the same way. It just for whatever reason, the algorithm decided like there's less people to push them out to.
yeah,
Sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes it's like an artist just arbitrarily triples in monthly listeners because the algorithm loves them. But the curse of that is what happens when they decide they no longer love you anymore, right?
yeah, yeah. You're not in control, really, and I guess you just got to keep releasing new songs, keep promoting, keep running ads like, you teach. You just gotta you kinda gotta force the stream sometimes and, try and trigger that algorithm, right?
Yeah. You also do something that is less commonly talked about in the whole, like, as you mentioned earlier, people still buy CDs. You still sell CDs. Not only that, you do the whole free plus shipping and handling funnel thing.
Mm,
And, I think I talked about this in our last interview on my channel, but there was a point where I went through one of your funnels just to see what you were selling in your funnels, to see like what shipping service you used, and just to funnel hack you, right? That's what
yeah,
the whole Russell Brunson funnel hacking thing. I bought, I think the wolves. I think it's that one
yeah,
you have behind you.
yeah, I run with
Um,
wolves, yeah.
and that's when I learned that like you use the whole letter rate shipping because I saw like, oh, it's like letter rate. Like, how the hell did he do that? And I saw you were using like disc.com or something
Yeah, yeah,
for distribution. And so that's another trip, I guess, for anyone watching. It's like funnel hacking is a real thing. You see someone doing something you want, pretend like you're a fan and go through and learn from them. But you've sold a ton of like albums, not just like streaming and digital, but like physical copies. And where do you feel like that fits in your overall plan nowadays?
yeah, we've done over 30 to 40,000 CDs through Facebook and Meta ads. So I actually got featured on the Facebook business page for ads. They flew me down there. They did a whole case study around it. And then they banned my account 6 months later. And so I gotta use my mom's ad account. So isn't that funny, you know? Use me for the thing and then, screw me.
That's the most Facebook thing I've ever heard,
Oh my
honestly.
gosh, right? But, it's really powerful. I haven't been doing it as much. I have the link in, like, the description of my YouTube videos and, but I haven't been running ads to it recently. I do wanna crank it back up. It definitely works. Um, and, yeah, all my fulfillment happens out of the US. If I do crank it up on a big level, though, I might consider bringing it in-house again just to, involve my daughter and my father-in-law in the business and whatnot, and just have a little bit more control. But, it's a great way to build a list of customers, you know, like of buyers, right? Because like these are people that are not just joining as freebie seekers, just as a free download, or because they pre-saved your song. They have pulled out their wallet, and I will tell you, a buyer's email list compared to a freebie seekers, is just 10 times more valuable, and so people still want a souvenir, like, if I was touring, I'd still be selling even more merch or whatnot, but it's figuring out what fans want. If they bought more music, generally, they want even more music, more CDs, and so it's like, um, it still works, but you just gotta be willing to test and try different songs, different ads, and until it works, but, like, yeah, it's a great fan acquisition model, I find, different than just going directly to streams. Like, you can literally not just be break even, but you can be profitable, which is crazy, right?
Yeah, what kind of cost per purchase were you typically getting, like, the most recent campaign you ran for one of your free plus shipping funnels?
Man, anywhere from, like, 10 to 16 bucks, 10 to 20 bucks, just depends. But our average, like, our AOV was, like, 20 something. And so I'd like to get that lower. I don't know if you've been running ads with it recently, but like you got to have those upsells, right? Because if you don't have the upsells, it's not going to be profitable. So there have to be other things in there that you can sell. Otherwise, just giving away a CD for like 6.99 or 7.99, you got to pay for the ads, you got to pay for the CD, and then you got to pay for the shipping, right? And so,
Yeah.
just $8 on its own, that's not going to cover it, right? So that's where you
It
offer.
covers the CD and the shipping,
Yeah,
but not the 10 to $15
yeah,
or even 20
yeah,
of ads.
yeah. But that could be just considered marketing. Like you could just, even if you're eating it on a dollar or $2, per thing, you're getting all the impressions. Like part of
Right.
the case study on Facebook, like when we were ramping this up, I was spending like $500 plus a day on this, right? And we were selling like up to 60, 80 CDs a day at one point. And so like my
And your
stream,
local post office must have been
oh
going
dude,
crazy with the just dropping off 80 CDs a day.
I had to outsource it. It was wild for sure because I couldn't handle it. And then when there was upsells, it's like, oh, which person took the upsell? And so that's why we just had someone else handle it. But what was cool is, whatever the song I was using in the ad, those streaming numbers were going up. Those iTunes numbers, Shazams were all going up, right? So it's like I was making the money on the sales, but I was also getting more streaming revenue, which was dope.
Right. That's an interesting part of it that I've definitely seen. Sometimes it's not dramatic, but you definitely do see like Shazams
Yeah.
for sure. Anytime you run an ad in a song or a song in an ad, you get Shazams. And I've also found people looking you up on or the video or just you in general on YouTube is a big part of it too.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, from a campaign I showed you before, and I forgot to show this on my YouTube was people are now going over like we're finally hit that kind of spending enough, getting enough impressions that people are now searching up the song on YouTube and leaving comments on the music video. So like if someone's left a comment on the music video, I'm sure there's at least another dozen or so that have just at least looked it up and watched it, right?
Yeah,
So that's exciting when you see that kind of overflow that like this isn't just going to Spotify. People are obviously converting and wanting to lean in more, you know?
totally. I mean, I'm running like actually a bunch of these now for someone else. And like I think we're running like 10 of these funnels
Oh,
or
wow.
something for different albums that they have. And it's all over the place. Like I think the best one going off of lifetime data is $13 per purchase.
Okay.
We have ones that are worse for sure. Like one of them right now is like $50 a purchase, which is pretty brutal.
Yeah.
Um, so we have ones that were improving, but we have multiple that are in the teens,
Okay.
and then we have some that are around the low 20s and stuff. And so when I did it a couple years ago, my own music, I think I got one of them down to between, depending on the time and week, and it was between 10 and 12.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
this is more like, one, we have upsells to vinyl here, so some of them actually have done a great job of recapturing.
Oh, cool.
And kind of like a cool data point that we did is we noticed we weren't selling as many vinyls as we wanted, and so I launched a vinyl funnel.
Oh, cool, man.
Obviously not free plus shipping, right? Because vinyls are expensive as hell. But where it's about $32 per purchase. We're
Okay.
selling the vinyl for 25,
Okay.
and 57% of people take a $10 upsell to get the CD.
That's
So
cool.
our and then we also have a few other upsells, but our average cart value is like $32,
Yeah.
and our purchase is 32. Granted, the cost of the vinyl, the cost of shipping, but like I was shocked because we also have a free CD version of that same funnel, same album, everything's the same except it's CD and vinyl swapped.
Yeah.
The CD version in the last 30 days, as it was like 19 and it shot up to like 30. It's more expensive than the vinyl funnel.
Interesting. Yeah, there's definitely more nostalgia around the vinyl. One of the upsells that did really, really well for me was and charging for it is get it signed. So one of
Yeah.
our best bumps, and it was normally on the same pay. It wasn't the upsell, it was the bump. So before they actually hit cart was like, hey, get it signed, plus maybe I don't know if I have any with me, like a free sticker pack or something like that, or a second CD or something like that. I found the vinyl did not do well as an upsell on the CD funnel,
Yeah.
but other CDs did. And I would probably think, but I bet you though the CD upsells do good on the vinyl funnel. I bet. I bet you they.
57% of
Yeah.
people who grab the vinyl take
Yeah.
the CDs,
Yeah.
but less than 10% of the people that took the free CD get the vinyl.
Yeah.
So on all of our free CD funnels, we've been swapping out, not all of them, but a lot of them, we've been swapping out the vinyl upsell to a 7 CD bundle.
Oh, cool,
And
man.
that has been much better.
Yeah.
Like a much higher percentage of people take it. It's actually, I think it's slightly higher price because it's 7 CDs, and I think we do it for like, I think, 7 or $6 a CD.
Okay.
So it's still more expensive than the vinyl, so it increases our cart value, and CDs are, like, practically free
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
make, right? They're like $1.50 a unit or
Oh,
something.
for sure. Yeah, I used to
So
pay a little bit more, but I'd also well, about that because I would press so many, but I've been pressing less, lately, but, we would do the fold-out poster and do all the fancy stuff. I don't know, I didn't do that for this one. This one was just a
that's what you did for the Wolves one, because I remember I
yeah,
opened it up and I was like, "What the hell is this thing?" And it
yeah,
was like a CD size, but it like one of those things you fold out like a million times and it's
yeah.
just poster.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
like,
I
damn.
tried to give as much value as I could, and also just say, "Hey, you're getting a fold-out poster with this thing as well too," just to
Yeah.
kinda just provide as much value, but, you got me inspired, man, to wanna turn and start messing with that again. I feel like just like we do for ads for Spotify, like the playlist, where you test a lot of creatives, I think there needs
Yeah.
to be more testing with the free plus shipping to get that ad cost down, you know?
Totally. Yeah, and even for this particular dude that we're doing it for, like, he's got, like, 8 or 10 different ones, and even from that perspective, like, you can see the difference across them. Like, there's, like, $13 and there's, like, 50, right? And so,
Yeah, yeah.
even just testing different albums can make a huge difference,
Wow.
which if you have one album, that kinda sucks, but, like, in your situation where you
Yeah,
have, like, 8 or so, I don't know how many you have, but you
yeah,
have a lot of albums,
yeah.
you can test different ones and see what people like the most, and then because you don't care about the CD sales from the perspective of like selling a particular album. You care about it from the perspective of gaining a lifelong fan.
Yeah, I've got still we pressed a crap load of more I Run With Wolves CDs, and honestly, I've been sitting on those, and I should really crank it up. I do have lots of another one as well too, and so I should try that as the front end as opposed to the Wolves CD just to test it, just to see how it does, you know? Yeah, that's a good idea,
Yeah.
man. I'm gonna do that.
If you're enjoying this interview, there's actually 30 more minutes coming your way. So make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you get notified when that comes out.
So Jesse and I both independently saw this piece of content earlier today, wanted to stitch it, but instead of having time to do it, we wanted to discuss it here because it is such an interesting point. And his name is Greasy, right? Greasy?
Greasy Will.
Greasy Will. I there's nuance to this discussion, but let's watch the video and then we'll deconstruct
You want to
it.
know how I know that a label isn't going to do anything for your career? Look at this. 1 million followers, one of the biggest record labels in the entire world, Universal Music Group. 1 million followers. Oh, here's an artist they're trying to promote. 318 likes, 9 comments, 109 likes, 83 likes. Labels have absolutely no idea how to promote a new artist. If you are not already popular, they don't know how to make you popular, which is proven by the fact that they themselves are not capable of making their own artists popular. If I got 83 likes on a post I made, I would just delete that post. That's embarrassing. And I have 37,000 followers. These motherfuckers have 1 million. They don't even have real followers, bought and paid for. Fact is, labels are a scam. Always have been, always will be.
There's a lot of different opinions in that video, and
Yeah.
I think overall, it's a misnomer, in my opinion, to equate the company's ability to market a musician with their ability to market their label. That said, showing how little people care about the content they're posting does say something about a label's ability to be curators in and of themselves. And I'll make a comparison because his argument falls apart if you were to go look at Sumerian's TikTok.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely
Yeah.
crushing it because they're tastemakers. People respect them as tastemakers. There's something there that Universal no longer has. And I believe it was Kristen of Billboard. I forget her last name, but she did
Kristen
an article.
Robinson,
She's brilliant. I love her.
the
Like her
best writer in the business.
100%. And she did this piece where she talked about how labels like Universal are becoming venture capitalist groups. Independent labels like Sumerian are becoming what major labels were in terms of their ability to promote. And you see that in their tastemaker status.
There's a couple things I want to just lay out here real quick that I think people forget about, and I think musicians especially forget about, because when you're like in it, you're in it, so you kind of have blinders on a little bit. And I think the first thing is like no human being walking around today who is like into new music is like, ah, yes, I like artists on Universal. Like they might be like,
okay. I have a really weird pushback for you.
oh, really?
This is fucking nuts. I thought the same thing as you, that I went to Harajuku, Japan a few months ago, and you go to the fucking record company stores and people see their taste curation as a fucking brand. There was a line to fucking get in.
Okay, so people in the West
Yes.
typically,
But like, yeah, it is totally strange.
but yeah, but like broadly speaking, like nobody's going around like, oh, I like artists on Universal. Universal knows this and has like a bazillion sub labels, and
Yep.
there's a decent chance your favorite smaller label is owned by one of the majors. So that's the first thing to understand. And the other thing to understand when you're a musician and you're in it is like, let's say you like The Ocean and you like their label Pelagic, which is incredibly curated. Really good label if you like prog and post metal. Gorgeous. But I know personally, because I'm very in that world, a lot of people who like all those bands, but who would not know what Pelagic Records was, right? Because people are still very frequently much more fans of the artist than they are of the label. If you're a label and you're creating content trying to serve people in like 100 different niches because you're just trying to showcase whatever you're putting out, you cannot like none of those posts will get traction because they're like working against each other, right? Because it's like we did a
Yeah.
hyper pop post, then we did like a folk pop singer songwriter post, then we did like a rapper, and like all those artists live under Universal, and that's great, right? But like
Isn't Deftones on Universal?
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Probably.
It's like the hyper pop people do not care about the rapper whose fans do not care about the folk pop singer songwriter whose fans do not care about Deftones. So like it's kind of a exercise in futility. And so I think you really need to keep all three of those things in mind when watching that TikTok.
Well, and a label's tastemaker status doesn't say much about their ability to market an artist. But I have, and you probably have all experienced this, I have been approached by many artists before I had any sort of presence online, and it the whole reason I started my TikTok page was I had an artist say, "We want to work with you, but if you're so good at marketing, how come you don't exist online?" And that in my mind at the time, I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna prove them. If I can make this old mug do something online, I can make their 21-year-old ass do something online." But what I've learned over time is it is a false equivalency. Like it's just like my ability to market artists has not changed at all. I am just as good as I ever was. And so artists are giving themselves a disservice by holding their person to the same, and they still do, man. So many people want to work with me, and I appreciate it because they're like, he gets it because I have proof. And maybe that's what it is. It's a case study that I can figure it out. But there's so many great deals that I've seen artists turn down because the label doesn't exist online or has a shit website. And I'm like, yeah, but their team is amazing. Leo
Yeah.
33 is one.
Your ability
Amazing
to promote your music marketing, the fact you can help artists, like your ability to promote that has nothing to do with your ability to actually help artists grow.
Yeah.
Even though it's like both are like involve social media. It's like they're completely different things. One's like an educational niche and one's more of an entertainment
That's the other thing.
niche.
And
And so it's like
artists
completely
aren't
different.
typically in an educational niche.
Yeah,
No.
and I'm on Sumerian Records, as you mentioned earlier, like their SMS list because they're one of my favorite labels of all time. And I know like a lot of the bands that are on there. And so I know like if they're gonna push a band to me, there's a good chance I'm gonna like it because
Yeah,
they curate stuff that I'm gonna
because
like.
they're niche.
Well,
But like if Universal or like generic Warner, and not one of like the imprints that they have that are more like specific and niche down, like I'm not gonna like 99% of what they have in their label because it's gonna be like here's a hip hop artist, there's a metal artist, there's a rap artist, there's like whatever. It's all gonna be different. Where Sumerian, it's like it's tight. Like I love Sumerian, I love Basic Records, I love Pelagic Records. There's all these labels I know that are like UNFD, I think Unified. I don't know how you say it, but like I love most of their stuff. But like there's a lot of labels that are more generic, and there's that. But even the tighter labels, like the ones that are kind of curated, I think if they do their job right, they're not like they shouldn't really be trying to grow an audience for themselves per se. Like their
Yeah.
job isn't to promote the label; their job is to promote artists.
Well, no, I really well, and I'm sorry, Jesse. I just want to make
no,
one
go
other
ahead.
point
Go ahead.
on that was that when you have a label who's really interested in developing artists, they will change themselves to be more of that niche. And I'll give you an example, and this is very Nashville machinations, but Universal Nashville recently changed their name to MCA. I think it's not a great name.
That's their old imprint from the
It is
70s
their
and
old
80s.
imprint.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
I
it
mean,
was when they were developers, right?
yeah.
And they have Dave Cobb at the creative direction of that company.
Amazing mind. I've worked with them a lot.
Yeah, and they want to develop. So in order to develop, they want to be seen as creators. So going back to the old name, again, it's very corporate name, but the idea, the ethos is we're developing. And so it makes sense.
So, I mean, the other thing I do think is a little silly about this video, which is what I was going to stitch, is so he uses Olivia Dean as the first thing, and he's saying major labels don't know how to break artists. Olivia Dean is right outside the top 500 artists on Spotify, and they've had her since pretty much day one for 6 years. So like, this is the other thing is like,
Crazy.
I have endured many years of making videos called "How to Go from 0 to 1 million fans," and people saying you don't have 1 million fans, and me having to go. I talk about the nerdiest shit on earth with a weird voice, and I'm old as fuck. Do you think I'm the same thing as someone with a good song? But truly, the thing being tier 2, we are in an era where, yes, a lot of labels are not very good at being consistent at breaking things. But the other thing this misses is that, like, going in the other week, data wise, it's like once you get past 3 million monthly listeners, it gets increasingly hard to find artists who are not in the major label system or the major distribution system that have more than 3 million monthly listeners. Once you get around 15 million, they're nearly non-existent.
None of us, I don't think, are really defending labels here. It's more so that I think the argument that they don't help artists or they don't know how to develop artists is I think this dude's making a very just ignorant argument here, which is
I mean,
it's like
he's
I
not
think it's
wrong,
reasonable
but
to
he's
look at it and say like, well, they can't even promote themselves. How they promote that? But like at the end of the day, that whole argument is kind of silly.
Yeah, it's the he's not wrong in the sense that the labels are struggling to develop artists, but that's not why. Like it's
Yeah.
right answer, wrong equation sort of thing. I mean, and mostly labels could be really, really good at developing, but I think labels like Universal are finding it much more lucrative to just invest in catalogs and fire their marketing teams. And then
Yeah.
ironically, hiring companies like the Four of Ours to do the work. They find that more cost effective because they're not keeping people on year round and they're
Yeah.
making us all compete against each other. So I think
It's a
it's
lot
more of a
cheaper to
tactical thing.
hire us for one job than keep us on payroll and give us benefits.
Yeah,
You
they'll go
know?
to Matt and get a quote, come to me and say, well, Matt's going to do it for this. And then I'll have to negotiate something and then go back to Matt. And so what they would have paid somebody in a year, they're paying a tenth of that, for the time period that they need.
In an ideal case, that winds up being better for the artist, which is to say there are four totally different niches and also four totally different executions that Universal could hire each of us for.
True.
That was each our specialty, right? Like there's
Mm-hmm.
definitely things at a label like that like I could do, but Dustin would be better at, and vice versa, and that's fine. And I think, ideally you have people who kind of grasp that, although that is frequently not the case.
Thank you guys so much for listening to this podcast. We're trying to get this to go as far as we can. So if you found it interesting, please send it to a friend and continue the discussion.
If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. If you're on YouTube, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our episode every Tuesday. If you could rate us on Apple and Spotify, that would be super awesome of you.